Good afternoon. I'm Roy Priest, the chair of the Montgomery County Housing Opportunities Commission. I'd like to welcome you to our March 11th meeting and to introduce my fellow commissioners who are present with me. To my immediate left, to my Jeffrey Merkowitz, who is our vice chair, Robin Solomon, who is our chair pro tem, and Linda Kroom, as the commissioner, will be coming momentarily. To my immediate right, Jonathan Miller, Paul Weech, and Isola Shaw. I'd also like to welcome our staff who are present with us too. I see Chelsea, our president, Aisha Memon, who is our general counsel, and also Kayleen Brown. You can see us, but I can also see the fact that there are a lot of HOC staff who are also present with us, and so you don't always see them, but I want to acknowledge your presence and welcome you to this meeting. We have a fairly ambitious agenda today, so I would like to proceed with the agenda. Are there any amendments to the agenda as outlined?
I'd like to make a motion that we move the meeting outdoors.
We'll second that motion.
That's what the roof is for.
Yeah. We'll put the revolving roof. Come back. With that, let's go forward with the agenda. We do not have anyone who has indicated a desire to participate in the community forum today, and so we'll proceed to the next item on the agenda, which is a report from our president, Chelsea Andrews.
All right, thank you so much. Good afternoon, commissioners, members of the public, and the HOC team. I'm pleased to share an update in regards to our activities. Next slide. Commissioners, as you know, we continue to rotate through our three primary goals based on our strategic plan that we adopted last year. The three goals being to expand affordable housing in Montgomery County, enhance the lives we touch through supportive services and partnerships, as well as excel as a world-class organization. Next slide. Overall, our goals have been on track. As you can see, we're at about 58% progress across the board. This is a depiction of our dashboard that is located on our website. I want to encourage members of the public to check it out at www.hocmc.org, where additional information on each of our goals can be located. Next slide. Today, we are going to focus on goal 3, which is to excel as a world-class organization. There are 3 sub-goals. One is to excel as a world-class place to work. Another is to excel by providing world-class customer service. And the third goal is to excel through modern technology and data systems. Next slide. In terms of goal 3, we have definitely moved the needle pretty significantly. We are at 75% progress of the goals that we identified and are moving right along. Next slide. Excited to welcome you to our new HQ. You see a photo depicted of us saying farewell to Kensington, which is currently being decommissioned, and our team enjoying our new space. And so I really want to make sure that we have an opportunity to applaud many of the teams that are behind the scenes in making this a reality. That includes our facilities team, our information technology team, public affairs and communications, and HR that really work together to bring us into this new space. This space is beautiful. It's 79,000 square feet, 9 stories, has a lot of great technology and supports a staff of over 200 employees, and also has swing space for all employees across our various offices. Next slide.
Chelsea, I'm just curious in that previous slide how you and Kay Reed managed to fight the tears back.
I know. Well, it is sentimental. We were in the building for 35 years, so, but yes. Next slide. Okay, just to update in terms of the efforts underway to excel as a world-class place to work. A great deal of that includes focus on talent acquisition and retention. As it pertains to talent acquisition, in the past 3 months, we've hired 9 full-time staff members, 8 temporary employees, and have had 4 competitive promotions over the course of the fiscal year, you can see our stats here: 33 full-time employees, 23 temp, 10 competitive promotions. And we've revamped our orientation schedule just to incorporate more information on who we are, include our core commitments and all of the benefits, add additional information on HQ as well as our other properties. Next slide. In terms of how we are recruiting, I will say that the HR team is doing a great job of, and this is a new effort over the last 2 years for HOC, participating in job fairs. And so we have been going to job fairs, Workforce Solution, Montgomery College, Rockville, as well as Tacoma. And within the last 2 years have stood up programs, leadership programs for our management and executive teams. And these have been, again, first of its kind in terms of focusing in on providing professional development to our mid-level managers. It's a program called CORE that we moved forward, as well as a program um, referred to as SOAR for our executive team. Next slide. We're also pleased to share one of the goals that we identified was to create an internship program. HOC has now done the back work to get that program created and established. And this summer, we will welcome our first interns through this program. We were successful in securing funding through University of Maryland in a grant partnership. And we have 10 divisions in this initial pilot that will be hosting interns this summer. Next slide. Switching gears to excelling by providing world-class customer service, you will see that we continue to survey our customers who stop by our properties. There's QR codes there. There's every time there's a phone call, an opportunity to answer a survey, and at property level as well. And based on those ratings, our overall rating is pretty high in terms of people who rate us as excellent. There's 82%, average is 15%, and 3% reflect poor. We continue to work on opportunities for improvement, of course. And our call center continues to revamp and strengthen our SOPs that we're using to make sure that we deliver high customer service. Next slide. We're also exploring how to leverage technology and are pursuing a route of leveraging robocalls just for reminders to check the portal, check our website, submit your application, submit your information to really ensure that people get notified. And we're also leveraging the robocalls, not just for HRD and customer service related issues, but thinking about how we can use this for property management and other needs. And so we're undergoing a feasibility analysis, as well as constantly exploring AI and how we may be able to begin to lift up AI technology in the agency. Next slide. Again, this just reflects the fact that we do receive a high number of calls. It is on average anywhere between approximately 18,000 and 20,000 calls per quarter. And there was a dip during the last quarter, but that was the holidays, and we had some agency closure during that time. But we do have a high volume of phone calls that we receive. Next slide. Also focused on customer service is our focus on providing good customer service, timely response to maintenance work orders. You will see reflected here that our emergency work orders have trended in a positive manner, in which 100% of emergency work orders are being responded to within 24 hours. And our high priority work orders, we continue to improve our response time. We're now at 67% response time within a 5-day window. Next slide. This slide just focuses on another aspect of maintenance, and it's the work that we do when we're considering other ways to create revenue as well as be environmentally friendly. And so, just providing an update in regards to our energy generated through our solar programs across the portfolio. Next slide. Over the last quarter, our IT team did transition 1,500 of our scattered site portfolio residents to Rent Cafe. This is an online portal that allows our residents to pay rent, submit maintenance requests, communicate with us directly, as well as perform recertifications. And so, of course, individuals are still able to pay in person, but over time, we're going to move them to paying completely online. Next slide. In terms of technology, this is goal 3C. You will see that we have successfully launched OpenGov as our portal for procurements. It's on our website. Again, making sure that individuals who are interested or businesses can register for receiving alerts when different procurements are available. And this particular platform has streamlined the process for our team as well in terms of reviews. And we have also implemented Questica budget procurement system. We're in the process of training all staff on this new system, and that process is underway, but it definitely, once we're able to completely onboard it, will create more streamlined efficiencies across the agency. Next slide. We also continue to update as it pertains to the work we're doing with addressing the digital divide in our county in partnership with the state, and we're greatly appreciative, as well as the county. We have been able to install free broadband internet to 1,500 plus homes, and we've identified, for your reference, the properties that we wired and completed in partnership by or that will be completed by August of 2026 below. Next slide. Ken, my wingman here, is actually on the Hill today, participating in NARO Capitol Hill Day. So I will provide this update as it pertains to our legislative affairs. As many of you all already know, the Senate voted to advance the 21st century of road to housing and combine both the House and Senate housing bills with the Trump administration ban to large institutional investors from purchasing single family homes. And then separately from that, to give a federal update, our partners in Montgomery County are working to submit a request, a congressional earmark as it pertains to the Wheaton Gateway project. We've worked very closely with them to submit that request, and we're hopeful that we'll receive an earmark for the FY27 federal budget to support that project. Next slide. We also had a wonderful day in Annapolis on March 3rd, Lobby Day for Affordable Housing Advocates. This is a lobby day that's put together by Community Development Network. And I will say that we were the largest group of the entire group of folks there and had a great show out for HOC. And so that went well. We met with multiple elected officials and were able to champion our cause. It is in the next week here when we will find out which bills will be advanced. It's the committee reporting courtesy date, crossover date that takes place. So that's coming up here on March 17th. Once that happens, an update to the commission will occur advising which bills remain and are going forward. Next slide. In terms of local and county, Councilmember Mink introduced a bill last month related to ACs. This is air conditionings and single family homes, just sharing that insight or information. Councilmember Jawando also introduced a bill to ban price coordination and rent setting algorithms. I believe there was a press conference on this bill as well today. And so that is currently before the county council. Next slide. Also, in other developments, This is not necessarily directly tied to our goals for today, but we could not miss the opportunity to celebrate the fact that we were successful in our mortgage finance team did a great job in terms of issuing $150 million in our multifamily housing development bonds to fund the FHA risk share loan for the SAGE. So we're really excited about that. In fact, signing a lot of documents here today for our closing that will take place on March 18th. And we are also highly anticipating what we know will be a beautiful groundbreaking event that will take place in May. This will deliver 413 apartment homes, 30% affordable, adjacent to the Laureate, Shady Grove Metro Station as well. Next slide. And in terms of upcoming events, especially for the public, again, all of this information is on our website. There's a resource information session that's happening here on March 17th, fundamentals of housing taking place, as well as renter to home ownership virtual workshop series. And with that, next slide, I open for comments and or questions.
Any questions? Comments? Paul?
Yeah, thanks, Chelsea. All terrific news. I'm saying I had a bunch of little minor questions for each. First one, as you mentioned, all the great hiring that we're doing. How's the turnover doing?
Our turnover rate continues to remain low. In fact, we will make sure that we report out on that at the next iteration when we do this presentation. But we're well below average in terms of turnover. I don't have that percentage in front of me right this moment, but there has not been a significant spike in that regard.
We're net add.
Yes.
Good. And then the word robocall is kind of alarms me. Are we actually, I think of a robocall as an automated system that dials people's telephone numbers.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
We are exploring that technology because oftentimes people may not read their email to know that it is time for them to renew their application. It, of course, will allow people the opportunity to opt out. But for many people, getting another way of communication to let them know your application is getting ready to expire, it's another way that we are exploring communicating.
In context, I was thinking it was an automated answering service. When someone calls us, it tells them to push 3, push 4, push 5. And then,
no, currently, actually, it does. When you call, our phone system does instruct you on which route you may want to go, but you ultimately get to a human. You press 1 if you need to speak to someone in HRD, and then someone who can answer that question answers it. But this is reminders more so.
Yep. Yes. Where I was really going, though, is the 18,000 calls a quarter. I think we've seen data in the past of sort of what they are about, but sort of what the general gist of the calls is. Is that changing? Is it?
We do. I do receive data on the nature of the calls. We break it down based on the number of calls that come in from the voucher program versus property management. It can range, but oftentimes there are calls about status on wait lists. There might be questions about our packet or materials that need to be submitted. It could be a follow-up call if someone sent an email and didn't hear a response back and you're looking to speak to someone. And so there's a wide range, and we do track that data so that we can, if there's an issue in terms of responsiveness, identify what that challenge is. We've had calls where people will say, I'll keep calling this number and the voicemail's full, and it alerted us that there was a glitch in the system and we were able to fix that. So it is monitored very closely on a daily basis in terms of the nature of calls. It also helps alert us if there's an emergency happening at a site that we didn't get a call yet from whatever emergency provider should have provided us with that call.
Yeah, so I was sort of hoping that the number was going up because we're doing a great job of letting our residents know we're here, we're available to you, and we're getting more information. So.
Well, the good news is when they call, they're satisfied.
That's good.
But in terms of, I think we serve so many people that it's just a reflection of who we are.
Yeah.
Yes.
I wanted to just congratulate the team on the high priority. The numbers on the high priority response time are just terrific to see, and and a big kudos to get those done. And then my final one is, am I remembering that we have commercial space here that we're going to lease
In
in this
HQ
building?
or across? Yes.
in this building?
Yes.
Yeah. How we doing on that?
We are working with a broker. There's some potential interest from various potential tenants that we're communicating with. And we're trying to find the best fit. As I shared before, we would love to have a coffee shop or some form of food here, but I will say that we're open. And so we're working with a broker. You might have noticed that, on this visit that now that the sidewalk is open, we were able to really put signage in a more meaningful way in front of the building. And so and now that it's warmer, we expect to hopefully receive a little bit more interest there.
Terrific.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Other comments?
Paul asked about the turnover rate. I also wanted to ask just about the vacancy rate.
And when you're referring to vacancy rate, you mean in terms of
Positions.
staffing?
Yeah, staff
I
vacancies.
can look that information up and get back to you all before the end of the meeting. I get a report out on an ongoing basis in terms of our positions.
Yeah. And I guess sort of related to that, whether there are specific positions or divisions where there are vacancies that are, more pressing than others.
That would be a very tough,
Yeah,
very tough
I mean,
answer
I
for
don't
me
wanna
to
create,
provide.
like, favorite
I
children or
would just
anything
say
like that,
that, across the board, and on our website is the list of all the positions. On any given day, we might have 20 to 24 positions that are available. You have people that are retired. You have people who might have had performance issues, and then there's turnover. You have people who've chosen to go to different places. We have new positions that have been created. So it really does vary. And I can get back to you all in regards to if there's a spike, but I would say that across the board, there's not one particular area, except for some of our more difficult to find positions. You could imagine where a certain skill set is needed and it's difficult to find that particular skill set.
I was going to suggest, if it's okay with you, maybe once in a while in the president's message that you highlight a resident service that you provide. I'm not sure how familiar our commissioners are. I'm certainly not of the services. I know they're extensive, but I don't know the programs exactly. And maybe periodically you could spend 3 minutes, 2 minutes on your opening statement highlighting, or Davida could talk about one program in particular just to educate us.
Yes, in fact, we did that just last month based on your recommendation.
Yeah, I did mention it once.
So we spotlighted
and I missed it.
three. Oh, yeah. So based on your recommendation, we spotlighted, I want to say maybe 3 to 4 programs to provide additional information.
Well,
but
that's
we'll
the
be sure to continue to
you
do
could have
that.
just said touche.
We'll be sure to continue to do that. You're welcome.
Zola?
Well, thank you for sharing all that great work. I had a question about the solar. So we saved around $200,000. How many properties have solar panels?
I'd have to get back to you on that, but there are a handful. Paddington, there's a number of properties that have solar, but I don't know that number
Okay.
off
Thank
the
you.
top of my head. Thank you.
The one comment that I would make is that is around our strategic plan. Right now, if I was teaching a class in public administration, I would use HOC strategic plan and process as a case study for my class, because I think we have done an outstanding job of standing up strategic plan and keeping it as a viable part of managing the organization and what we're trying to do, and incorporating it into our performance plans and other things like that. It's really important. I've been involved in a lot of strategic plans. Many of us have, most of us have, and most of them have been doorstops or something you put on your shelf to say, check the box, I've done one. but we are really living out our strategic plan. I just want to say, keep that in front of us. And for the staff also, I mean, if you follow the process and you get involved in some organization with a responsibility for strategic plan, you can pick this up as a model for how it should be done. It really, you wouldn't have the same goals perhaps, but at least the process that we've used for that. I just want to acknowledge that.
Thank you.
Any other comments? If not, we will move to the next item on the agenda, which is the Commissioners' Exchange. Are there any comments that want to be shared in that regard?
Mr. Chairman, I'll just quickly say I spent the first couple of days of the week at the NARO conference, so very interesting and helpful, and in some ways distressing, hearing about some of the challenges ahead of us. And then I spent today, the morning at least, on the Hill, talking with some of our, with Senator Alsobook's staff on some of the demands we have, and just to say we seem to have a very supportive delegation, and that's appreciated.
And Mr. Chair, I just wanted to share that I also went down to the NARO conference, but I went down a day early and took advantage of the training for commissioners that NARO puts on, and recommend it to my fellow commissioners who haven't done it yet. It was just really valuable to sit there amongst the commissioners from other public housing agencies around the country, hear the kinds of issues that are on their mind in terms of governance and on their roles and responsibilities. And then the NARO trainer was a very, very experienced former executive director from Michigan who did a great job of talking about the roles and responsibilities of commissioners, the kinds of things that should be coming before us. The one thing that has long been an interest of mine that he made a big emphasis on is finding more generative time when the commissioners can get together and work through or talk through some of the big policy issues that come before our organization. He kept saying these 2-hour meetings once a month aren't enough time to have those kinds of conversations. But in general, a very, very positive experience.
On that note, something that before our newer commissioners came on board recently, Chelsea and I had really gotten together with NARO to design a commissioner training for HOC. And we had not done it, but that was our goal to try to do that. And what happened was that we had all the vacancies. So we said, well, let's wait until we get a full commission and we'll do it. But so I'm glad that you were able to go to that session. They are very productive. You know, I was looking through, as we all do, publications, trade journals, and you know, just today I was talking a few minutes ago with Jonathan. You know that I don't know about all of you all, but I find myself very depressed about what's going on in the world today, in our country, and it's really disconcerting to me for someone who was born and active in civil rights all of my life and still am today. That to see where we are as a country going backwards is really very unsettling to me. And on the housing side, though, I was looking at a report that talked about that non-building construction was down by 14%, and residential fell by 6.4% in the last month. A lot of it due to impacts from tariffs, costs of everything and equipment. And, you know, start thinking about those things and how it impacts us and being able to advance our construction development projects, and even for ones that we have now, like Wheaton Gateway as an example. I mean, that you know, the timing of when we do that could be easily impacted by some of these real costs about getting construction done. So I think I'm just raising that. I don't want to be a doomsday, you know, make everybody feel, you know, that's not what my goal is. But I just think that sometimes I think people don't realize some of the exigencies that we confront in our communities that impact our ability to deliver real product to our most needy residents. I want to mention that. With nothing else, then I don't see anyone here from the Resident Advisory Board yet. So with that, let me move on to the next item, which is the approval of minutes. We have 4 sets of minutes that are before you for review and approval. February 11th, open session, closed session on February the 11th, open session on February 23rd, and also a closed special meeting on the 23rd. Can I get a motion to approve these minutes? Properly moved and second to approve the minutes. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposers, nay. So ordered. The next item on the agenda are consent items. We have two consent items on, on the agenda today. The first one is dealing with the clarification of the finance plan at the Sage. These are consent items and don't necessarily require any discussion unless the commission has a question. And the other one deals with the change of address for a resident agent. And that's a very simple one because of the fact we have moved, we have to change the address of who our resident agent is. That's a simple change. So can I get a motion to approve these two consent items?
So moved.
Second.
Probably moved and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposers, nay. So ordered. We will now go into our committee reports and recommendations. The first is our Administrative and Regulatory Committee, and I will turn to our chair for that and welcome her to the meeting, Linda Kroon.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. I apologize for being late. It was my first time, but I made it here. And I'm very impressed with where we are now. I'm very impressed. Thank you. Let's see. The next term, we had a committee meeting, committee and regulatory affair meeting, regulatory committee meeting. And with that, we were discussing the revisions to Chapter 22 at the Housing Choice Voucher, HCV, Administrative Plan, related revisions to the federal fiscal year 2025. It's a public housing, I can't see this. A PH Plan 2 and resubmission of HOC FY 2026 annual. You would think I can't see, guys, which I can't. And 5-year PHA plan for public comment. Did I do it right? With that, we have Darcel and Lynn Hayes.
Yes. And thank you so much, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Just to bring us in perspective, we have come before the Commission on a number of occasions as it pertains to the work that we are doing to ensure compliance with HUD rules and requirements that will allow us to award project-based vouchers for our own properties, in this instance, the Sage. And there are a lot of technical requirements around that. We've had a great deal of public comment. We have public comment opportunities. There have been no public comments, but both our Vice President of Compliance, Darcel Cox, and our Vice President of Housing Resource Division, Lynn Hayes, has worked together to make these modifications in our admin plan as well as our annual plan. And so I will turn it over to them to provide you with this particular request and update.
Good afternoon. For the record, I'm Darcel Cox, Vice President of Compliance. Today, I'm asking the Commission to join staff's recommendations to adopt proposed revisions to Chapter 22 of the HCV Administrative Plan. This update will allow HOC to allocate project-based vouchers to HOC projects through a competitive and non-competitive process. Next slide. I am also asking for you to adopt language that defines when an agreement may be executed if construction has started prior to the effective date of the AHAP agreement. Next slide. Lastly, I'm asking the Commission to adopt the proposed revisions to the federal fiscal year 2025 5-year public housing agency plan regarding HOC's intent to award project-based vouchers to HOC projects through a non-competitive process. This concludes my presentation. I will take any questions at this time, but I will ask, does the commission wish to join staff's recommendations to adopt proposed revisions to Chapter 22 of the Administrative Plan and HOC's Federal Fiscal Year 5-Year PHA Plan?
Any questions?
Yeah, I've got a few, and most of them are just kind of nits. Forgive me, and I wish I had had a chance to send some of them in advance because some of them are kind of minor. But some questions just in terms of as it relates to the SAGE. I was noticing where the SAGE is referenced in the 5-year plan and the PHA plan. We don't reference the PBVs in there, where some of the other properties reference the PBVs, and I wasn't sure if those needed to be added or not.
Does it need to be added in a 5-year plan?
Yes, or in the PHA plan.
It does not need to be added to, the SAGE does not specifically need to be added to the 5-year plan. We kept that language
No, I'm
vague.
saying it's already in there. Like there's references.
We actually did a revision and we removed that language, so it should just be one sentence referencing that of HOC's intent to award project-based vouchers to HOC projects.
Okay,
So we
I guess
left
I'm looking at the 5-year plan and the PHA plan, and they both have paragraphs under.
Could you share what page you're on, and I can try to also follow along? You must be referring to the red line version.
Maybe,
Is that what's happening?
Yeah, I mean one is page 77 of 225.
Okay.
It doesn't have, and it's
Yeah, that's good.
SAGE at West Side. It's underneath, I'm looking to see other current and future affordable housing opportunities, and it lists Hillendale, Dunkirk Farms, Metropolitan, Wheaton, and SAGE. And some of the other properties note that they have PBV units, under the unit breakdown. SAGE does not. And there, as well as on page 123 of 225, it's the same thing. And that's page 11, I think, of the PHA plan.
We can go back and review. I'd be curious to have a conversation with the team in regards to the reference of PBVs. For example, the number that's identified for Metropolitan
I had a question about that
may
later
not be
on.
the number of PBV units.
Right.
What we're hoping to request, and in some instances, there has not been an award yet. And so the goal of identifying projects where we may use PBVs is to highlight where we believe we may want to use PBVs, not necessarily where they currently are allocated. And so the language is written in a way that allows us to have non-competitive and not hold us
Right.
to 38 PBVs, for example, for Metropolitan. That is something that we can modify. It does appear as though it's written as though there are currently PBVs and there's not.
Yeah.
So that is, thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Yeah, and those are just technical. I'm just asking what needs to be in there. More as on the competitive versus non-competitive, and there's a couple of numbering. There's some numbering issues in there that I can point out that are just a little off. There's 2 number 8s when one should be a 7, and I'll just send those separately. But on the competitive versus non-competitive, back in, I guess, in January, we approved the assignment of some PBVs to Enterprise for Springvale Terrace.
That was Faircloth units.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
So
So it's Faircloth to Rad, and it was our first time doing Faircloth to Rad,
Right.
which ultimately transitioned Rad, ultimately
Okay,
transitions.
so do those fall outside of the competitive versus non-competitive?
Right. We are able to award Faircloth to Rad without a competitive process similar to what was previously required for project-based vouchers. Project-based vouchers, you'd have to do an RFP and compete even to award yourself prior to the change in the rules.
Okay.
Yes.
And I knew they were Faircloth units. I thought we had assigned them as PBVs, but
We did Faircloth to Rad, and then the next step is to determine if it will be a PBRA or a PBV.
right.
That's where you heard the reference to those terms, but it's a Rad transaction, and
So outside of
in a different
what
program.
we're talking about here.
The public housing program versus the voucher program, which unfortunately do not follow the same rules. They all have different rules and requirements. Yeah.
Okay. That's helpful. So just wanted to understand this in that context. So no additional questions.
Okay, thank you, and I look forward to, we'll make that amendment here, and the other recommendations that you have, I'll take those from you as well. Thank you.
Okay, any more questions? Okay, with that, Commissioner Merkowitz, with the changes, we have a, resolution 2610, correct? That we're bringing before you now. We need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So moved.
Thank
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
That's the only item on the Administrative and Regulatory Committee agenda. Before we move on to the next committee, let me go back for a minute to the two consent items because they were specific resolutions associated with those, 2608 and 2609. So I want to make sure that the record reflects that we were approving Resolution 2608 and 2609 for those two consent items. Thank you. We'll now move to the Budget, Finance, and Audit Committee that I chair. The first item on the agenda for that is the fiscal year 2026 second quarter budget to actual statements, and I'll turn to our president.
Thank you, commissioners. We spent a great deal of time discussing our latest financials at the last BF&A meeting. We had an opportunity to share out information in regards to how our overall financial position is versus budget to actuals and how our properties are performing in comparison to where we were hopeful that they would be performing. I do want to make sure that we delineate between the two issues. Overall, our financial position is stable. We have solid ratios, etc. As it pertains to our budget to actuals and our anticipation for how properties would turn and how we would begin to generate revenue at this stage in comparison to where we are continuing to experience and is reflected in the quarterly update, delinquencies, challenges getting through the court system, as well as really the additional expenses of turning the units. I will say that we have reported out on this repeatedly. We are continuing. It's an all hands on deck effort. We're closely monitoring the property management team, the maintenance team, asset management, our legal team all work in tandem to closely monitor and ensure that we are moving as quickly as we can with regards to tenants that need to be transitioned outside of our properties. We have also since deployed additional support with resident services, reaching out to families that are in our scattered sites portfolio and in certain properties where when they miss a month of rent, there's a reach out that's happening to try to understand how we can be of service as well as connect them to resources. The county does provide eviction protection support only if and when an eviction is filed, up to $3,000. There are definitely families who have delinquencies that far exceed that, who aren't eligible, and we try to work with and refer families to other nonprofits that can be of support. But as it stands, we're making our way through and turning the units as quickly as we can. And just wanted to lift that up again, indicate that we've had an opportunity to share this out at BFNA. I will turn it over to our finance team to provide further details.
Thank you, President Andrews, Commissioners, and the viewing public. For the record, Tim Getzinger, Senior VP of Finance and CFO. This evening, the finance team will be presenting 2 items, including the budget to actuals as well as the tenant write-offs. And before we get into the first item, the following is a high-level summary of the agency's FY26 Q2 financial position. Staff will provide details in the aforementioned presentations. HOC's financial health remains stable. Net position continues to be strong at $307 million, the third highest quarterly close in 4 years, and $1.2 million higher than the first quarter. However, it is lower than the fiscal year end 2025, driven by a $9.4 million operating loss, which is partially offset by a $5.9 million non-operating revenue gain. Current and quick ratios are up slightly from the end of the fiscal year at 1.94 and 1.63 respectively. The atypically low liquidity ratios were attributed primarily to debts of Bradley Crossing and Battery Lane being reclassified from long-term debts to current liabilities. The Battery Lane debt was refinanced early in the third quarter of FY26, and the Bradley Crossing debt is expected to be refinanced later this month. Had the refinance occurred prior to the close of the second quarter, the current ratio would have been 3.57, and the quick ratio 3.00, which are more reflective of the agency's financial health. HAP utilization is stable and up slightly from the end of the fiscal year at 96% for the quarter. Tenant arrearages increased again this quarter by $1.1 million after 2 quarters of reductions and sits at approximately $16 million. A review of our 9 revolving development funds also demonstrates stability and are projected to improve with upcoming commitment and development fees. Reserves, including the general fund operating and property reserves, are stable. Regarding the budget to actuals, post-COVID renormalization of operations is underway. And as the Commission is aware, this is a long process as the court system continues to be a hurdle in repossessing and repositioning our inventory. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, or we can advance to the first packet item, which is our second quarter budget to actuals.
Are there any questions at this time?
Thank you. Presenting the first agenda item, the agency's FY26 Q2 budget to actuals, is Cedric Court, our Assistant Budget Officer.
Thank you, Tim. Good afternoon, Commissioners, President Andrews, staff, and the viewing public. For the record, I am Cedric Cord, the Assistant Budget Officer here at HOC. I will be discussing the second quarter budget to actual statements for FY26. If we could turn to page 16 of the packet in attachment A, the top of page 16 here. Overall, the agency ended the quarter with a negative variance of $9.6 million based on a net cash flow shortfall of $10 million compared to the anticipated second quarter net cash flow shortfall of negative $442,000. The primary causes were lower unrestricted cash in a number of the Development Corporation and Opportunity Housing properties because of property performance coupled with lower income in the general fund, partially offset by savings in various expense categories in the fund. For the general fund, still looking here at attachment A at the top of page 16, the general fund consists of basic overhead costs for the agency. It's expected that the general fund will operate at a loss. The fund ended the quarter with a deficit of approximately $4.9 million, which resulted in a negative variance of $2.1 million when compared to the projected deficit of $2.9 million. As of December 31st, 2025, income in the general fund was approximately $4.3 million lower than budgeted, and expenses were $2.1 million lower than budgeted. The negative income variance was primarily the result of delays in receipt of commitment and development fees for FY26. The impact of to the FY26 general fund due to the size and timing of certain fee income through December 31st, 2025, was a shortfall of approximately $4.04 million when compared to budget. If the fees had been received as planned, income in the general fund would have had a negative variance of only $236,000. In addition, there were lower draws from the OHRF for real estate personnel and pre-development costs. The impact of the lower fees and draws on income was partially offset by higher interest income earned on unrestricted cash in the general fund, coupled with higher management fees paid by the Housing Choice Voucher Program. As a result of higher administrative fees received, that was partially offset by lower bookkeeping income paid based on lower than anticipated utilization through the second quarter of FY26. The positive expense variance was primarily the result of lapse in salary and benefits, coupled with savings in computer software, online information services, miscellaneous contracts, and capital projects, which resulted in lower transfers from the operating budget to cover the cost of the projects. A portion of the savings is timing related and not expected to remain at year end. Next, we will move to the multifamily and single family bond fund that we can see here in the same table here on page 16. The multifamily bond fund and single family bond fund are budgeted to balance each year. Income, the bonds drawn down that finance the administrative costs for these funds, is consistent with the budget. The multifamily and single family bond funds experience positive expense variances of $371,491 and $174,678 respectively as a result of salary and benefit lapse coupled with savings in professional services. Next, we will move to the Opportunity Housing Fund. If we can scroll to the top of page 17. Bad debt and vacancy loss were the primary drivers of increased negative variance across most properties. Some of the bad debt overages are attributed to an increase in non-paying tenants during the quarter. Additionally, the properties experienced higher maintenance costs due to higher than anticipated unit turnover, which corresponds with higher vacancy loss. In the first part of this chart, we have the Development Corporation properties in attachment B, again at the top of page 17. This chart is broken into two pieces, unrestricted and restricted properties. For the properties with unrestricted net cash flow, this group ended the quarter with a negative cash flow of $1.2 million or $2.9 million less than projected. As mentioned in our review, we determined that variance is often largely attributable to items such as lower tenant income due to lower gross rents and higher vacancy coupled with higher bad debt, higher maintenance, and utility costs. The higher bad debt is largely due to continual non-payment in some of the units, and this may continue to take some time to remove non-paying tenants from the residences we move through lease enforcement procedures. In group 2 here in the chart, properties with restricted net cash flow, if we can scroll to the bottom of page 17. The shortfall from this group of Development Corporation properties was $20,000 more than budgeted through December 31st, 2025. Next, we have the Opportunity Housing properties in attachment C. Group 1 are the properties with unrestricted net cash flow at the top of page 18. Cash flow for this group was $992,000 lower than budgeted. And I'll pause here if there are any questions that you may have. If not, we can move to the public fund, which is on page 19 as well. Here we see the HCVP program. Overall, there was a surplus of approximately $1.9 million. The surplus was comprised of housing assistance payment revenue that exceeded half expense by $1.1 million, coupled with administrative surplus of $752,000. The administrative surplus was a result of higher fee income and lower administrative expenses, mainly due to staff turnover, lower contract costs, and the timing of online information services payments that were paid early in June 2025 for FY26. The higher administrative fee income was primarily the result of proration reconciliation for CY25. Lastly, if we scroll to the capital expenses in attachment E on page 20, there were a number of properties with unplanned capital expenditures that have sufficient reserves to cover the expense. This concludes the presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. And I don't really have anything new to discuss. We discussed this at committee. The chair who chairs that committee was out that time, but so I just wanted to reiterate some of the themes that we discussed at that time. And, you know, totally get, you know, the development fees get delayed. Those will show up later. So less worried about that. When it comes to the rental income, you know, the most important thing is for us to get in the black overall. And we talked about that. And I don't think I'm expressing any frustration that the staff does not share, if not even more so. But, you know, it's also frustrating when, you know, our projections, even though I know we're being conservative, like continue to be not conservative enough. And I know some of the things have been outside of our control, but we need to figure out how to, so that we can manage for that when we're doing the budget. And I know there may be the possibility of a budget amendment at some point, but we need to figure out how we can get better at not having even our in the red projections be also even further in the red. The other thing we talked about a little bit was, you know, I think there's strong support within the HOC community on the commission and the staff for tenant protections when it comes to evictions or you know, lease enforcement actions. A lot of the delays that we're experiencing, you know, the court delays, the things that are pushing, you know, that are resulting in our conservative estimates not being conservative enough, are not about tenant protections. They're about, you know, delays in the court system, and you know, delays, you know, frictions that you know, are creating, you know, long delays in lease enforcement and creating really negative incentives for tenants who, you know, may fall a little behind in their rent, and you know, when lease enforcement could typically be expected to kick in, instead they know it's going to take a year, and that ends up, you know, hurting everyone, and it hurts HOC's bottom line, which in turn hurts our ability to provide affordable housing for more residents of Montgomery County. To the extent that we, you know, and I don't know where the pressure points are exactly, but to the extent that we can work to advocate for improvements in the court system. Now, again, I'm not talking about like changing the tenant protection laws, though, you know, we can look at those if there are places where we think it's, you know, what we don't want to become is like DC, where, you know, the laws became so strict that it was driving landlords. I'm not even talking about HOC or anything. We're staying, but you know, that it's creating disincentives for landlords to invest in affordable housing, and you know, so if there are places that, you know, where more resources need to go into the courts or someplace, and we can be advocating for that, you know, I'd like to see that as part of our legislative administrative agenda. So, you know, those were some of the things we talked about at the committee level. You know, so it's, you know, I know it's frustrating for everyone, and so I don't intend any of this as a criticism. It's, you know, these are the things though that we need to focus on.
So if I may, Mr. Chairman? So, excuse me, thanks, Jeff, that was great. I guess I mean, I've been on the commission now about a year, and this is clearly a frustration, and for all the reasons that Jeff just pointed out, bad for the agency and our ability to provide affordable housing, bad for tenants who are going to end up getting evicted and so forth. I guess I don't completely understand our process, but one of the things I really wonder, thinking back to the foreclosure crisis, as part of the Great Recession, when we were facing all the troubles in 2007, 2008, 2009, et cetera, is a lot of the big servicers essentially hired trusted third party, trusted third parties to do the communication, so that it wasn't, you know, your bank that was calling you or sending you a letter saying, even if even if meant in the most sincere way, if you know you're behind on your mortgage and you get a letter from your bank or a call from your bank, you just may not open it or return it. Even if the content is, we want to work with you, we have ways for you to address this problem and so forth. So what they started doing to some positive effect was hiring third-party trusted community entities to do the outreach that could then work with the residents, get them to sort of be an intermediary to get to contact the servicer. And we started seeing, and you started seeing a lot more participation in some of the programs, and the then Obama administration also was developing some more effective programs. And so I just wonder whether or not we've given some consideration, or if we do, using these trusted third parties, so that early contact, because the longer you wait, the deeper the hole, the more difficult it is to get out of that. Just throwing it out there as something to consider going forward.
Having been on the side of Chelsea Andrews as a president coming to a commission for something like this, I know what this is, a horror story. Okay, the last thing you want to do is to come to your commission and present a situation where your budget to actuals and stuff like that, you are $9 million differential between your projected budget and what your actuals are. I could make a lot of statements, but I'm not going to do that. Because I think that you all are earnestly working to try to correct that. I mean, and part of that comes from just the rigor in actually developing the budget. I know we go through a very rigorous process with the budget, and we make certain assumptions about when certain things are going to happen with development projects. And we are fortunate in a way, and it's a funny kind of, we are fortunate in a way that we have a large development portfolio. There are many agencies, public housing, who don't have a rigorous development portfolio as sources of revenues that are standing up behind their revenues that come just from rent payments. And if they're fortunate enough to get housing insurance voucher payments. And many of them are suffering severely. Fortunately, we don't have that problem right now, but we've got to make sure that we can be as vigorous as we can be about making assumptions about when certain things are going to happen with projects. And I know you do that. And a lot of it we don't control. I understand that. But how do we as a commission become maybe sometimes more informed about when these things are going to happen, so we're just not hearing them on a quarterly basis? It's kind of staggering because they've accumulated for a quarter. I don't have an answer for it right now, but it's very difficult sometimes to listen to all of this. And I know that we have overall a strong financial position, but we also have to be wary of these indicators that are not moving in the right direction. So we'll talk about that later, but
Can I ask one technical question?
Sure.
Just, I noticed this is on page 172 at the bottom of the whole package, that talks about some residents purchase surety bonds. Is that common?
I think that's in regards to the next packet item.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
That's one of those.
I'm
That's
sorry.
Tenant collection.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's the next item. Okay.
Sorry.
Well, if I may, I'll just quickly respond. We will be presenting a recommendation to amend this fiscal year's budget. We plan to advance that in the April commission meeting. We are also at the same time taking a very conservative approach towards our budget for our next fiscal year. Did I say fiscal year 27? I meant to say 26. There will be an amendment for 26, as well as a very conservative approach for 27. That includes us reporting out in terms of our estimates in terms of occupancy, our estimates in terms of collection based on where we are right now. It will include where we have experienced challenges, even with lease up for various reasons. And so we are definitely sharpening the pencils as much as we can. And at the same time, you will hear and continue to hear what we can control, which is expenses. I can't control if someone decides not to pay their rent, but we can control if we think creatively around how we procure painters so that we can get economies of scale, or when we're doing carpet replacement or purchasing appliances, or the level in which we're modifying every single unit, and how we're leveraging our CIP funds from the county to address some of these needs, as well as making decisions in regards to if we do full renovations for properties that might have $150,000 worth of need versus just addressing units to the extent that we can keep them online. And so I want to assure you that as it pertains to what we can control, we will take those steps. You will hear what we're doing in those regards. As it pertains to the approach of having others call, that is not something other than us now deploying our resident services team, which I will say has been a successful team and approach for us in the past. It's the group of wonderful employees who reach out and keep our voucher holders in the program. So we used to report on a monthly basis how many people were recommended for termination, how many people we were able to keep in the program. Same group of our housing stabilizers that are in the resident services team. They do a great job. They're very friendly, easy to talk to, and I do believe that with adding this additional reach out, we should be able to get more, hopefully, success. That doesn't mean that the reach out will make someone have money to pay the rent. What it will do is refer individuals to resources and give us more data. We will be asking questions when we reach out to people in regards to, it looks like you're having a challenge. Tell me more about what's going on so that we can have a better understanding of how many people were impacted by furloughs and have had changes in their home environment that has impacted their ability to pay their rent. So we will provide that moving forward as we continue those efforts. And just across the board, yes, the frustration is all around us, literally, across the street. Okay, it is all around us every day, all day, as we're trying to think through what we do to stabilize our portfolio. But anyone who has a business that the business model is real estate, you don't have a diversified portfolio. When the market is going bad, when people aren't paying, when people are losing jobs, you're seeing that downward projection in your revenues, and it's not balanced by we have this other offset, with the exception of us moving forward and advancing our real estate initiatives, which are also very much tied to the economy. And so we are in the midst of working through what is a difficult time. It is our expectation, though, over the long haul, that we will be able to stabilize the portfolio. We will be advancing recommendations around how we can get through this short-term challenge and ultimately continue to deliver on our mission.
Yeah, and I want to reiterate again, and I appreciate all of that, Chelsea. And so none of what I said is meant to I know the staff is not sitting still on this, and that's what I appreciate. So while we can't control you mentioned we can control expenses. We can't control whether somebody is paying rent. But like you said, I appreciate that, we are making those additional efforts now to reach out to early. We have long been trying to connect residents to resources. And so, again, we are not looking for reasons to kick people out of our housing. We're looking for reasons to keep them there. And that's, one of the important things about HOC, and what I appreciate that all of the efforts, and I know that, that ends up sometimes hurting our bottom line, but that's part of our mission. But it's, but there's part of our mission is also to be an ongoing concern. And as Roy said, fortunately, we are in a strong position. And so we have been able to absorb a lot of this, but obviously it can't go on forever. And so I really do appreciate all the efforts of the staff, on the budgeting side, on the services side, all of it. So, and, we just have to keep pushing. So.
And I just want to underscore that, as I looked through all this material and said that there must be a bright line in this. And the bright line is what you said, is the fact that if it were not for the effort that you made to control expenses, this would be even more dire story. So we want to compliment the efforts that have been made to be sensitive about that and try to control the use of funds. At the same time, you're looking at what's happening on the other side, where resources are going down that you expect to receive. So I want to just acknowledge that. So any other comments? With that, could we get a motion to approve resolution number 26-11?
So moved.
Second.
Been probably moved and seconded to approve resolution 26-11. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposers, nay. So ordered. We'll now go to the next item, which is uncollectible tenant accounts receivable. We've beaten you up enough on 26-11. We can perhaps get to this one easier. So with that, I'll turn to our president.
Yes, Commissioners, this is our housekeeping effort when we're moving forward with write-offs. And I will turn it over to our CFO, Tim Getzinger, to provide this update.
Thank you, President Andrews. Good evening again, Commissioners, staff, members of the public. Again, for the record, Tim Getzinger, Senior VP of Finance and CFO, and we are seeking your support for the write-off of uncollectible tenant accounts receivables for the second quarter of FY26. We can go to the top of page 3, please. Thank you. HOC's current policy is to provide for an allowance for tenant accounts receivable balance in excess of 90 days. Additionally, HOC periodically proposes the write-off of uncollected former resident balances. The proposed write-off of former tenant accounts receivable balances for the second quarter of FY26 is $701,233. Although it may seem contrary to previous quarters, when we take a look at the reasons, unit abandoned / vacated, it doesn't necessarily mean lease enforcement, but it is obviously impacted by lease enforcement. They leave it before the lease enforcement happens, and so it is all a part of it. It compares slightly better than last quarter. It is a 14% decrease in FY26 Q1. The write-off was $814,000. We continue our lease enforcement efforts with a focus on large delinquent accounts with unit inspections to identify vacant units. The drivers in Q2 were two main properties. One was the Scattered Site One Development Corp., which had write-offs of $471,000, and the other was State Rental Partnership, which had a write-off of $125,000. The next anticipated write-off of former tenant uncollectible accounts receivable balances will be for the third quarter of FY26, which will cover the period from January 1st to March 31st, 2026. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Now I'll ask the surety for protection.
With the surety bonds, some do, not all of them, and it does provide with, some assurance and some, protection.
I'm just wondering, 10%?
I think it is. I think it is actually 10%. I think that is the amount. I'll take a look, for certain.
Just curious.
I think a good number of people elect to use the surety. It's less than having to pay a deposit. And it comes in handy to allow someone to move forward with moving in. And so that's an option that we afford applicants.
From where we sit right now, what do you just forecast as what we're looking forward for the third and fourth quarter in terms of tenant accounts receivable?
That would be difficult to say, but I can tell you some of the different quarterly write-offs that we've had. I mean, again, so it was 814,000 in Q1. The previous fiscal year in FY25 Q2 would have been 303. So clearly, we are seeing more. As you have more and more lease enforcement, you're going to see more and more write-offs because of the uncollectible rent. So I would assume that this type of activity will stay consistent. I think we might have had $2 million total for last fiscal year. I can provide you with an overview of what we've done historically, but I would expect, given what we are seeing is more than what we were doing the last few quarters in the previous fiscal year, that we'll continue to see this type of activity as we move forward. The biggest indicator of that, of course, would be how many folks we're taking to the courts and how many folks aren't paying their rents, which is difficult to necessarily project, but all indications would suggest that we're going to see right around in that $600,000 to $800,000 write-off range per quarter.
So counterintuitively, at least in the short term, the higher numbers is suggestive of more lease enforcements so removing non-paying tenants and hopefully replacing them.
And this doesn't impact the income statement because the tenants already aren't paying.
Yeah.
What this does is this is just the balance sheet because we are not receiving those funds.
Yeah. It's so unfortunate that we're in this situation because the other people I think about are not only our current tenants, but we have a large waiting list. And there are people who really need housing who probably represent people who are willing to pay. And we're left dealing with tenants who are not willing to pay, demanding services, demanding other things, and yet we are not able to get them out of our property. Something needs to happen with that. I mean, really it does. And that's not the staff. I mean, that's the system we are dealing with. I understand that. I mean, it's the same across the board, but I mean, to have a waiting list of 40,000 people and many of them who will be more than willing to give you advance payment right now to get a property with us, we are going through this. And it's unfortunate. Can I get a motion to approve resolution 26-12? Probably moved and second to approve resolution 26-12. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposers nay. So ordered. We have now come to the last committee item, and what I'm going to do is before we adjourn the actual meeting, is Adam Punchek, if he wants to come to make a report from the Investment Advisory Board.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is my first visit to the new headquarters. It's beautiful, so it's great to be here. Commissioners, President Andrew, staff, members of the public, for the record, my name is Adam Pinchuk, Resident Advisory Board President. Before I go into my prepared statement, I was listening to the thoughtful comments of Commissioner Merkowitz, Miller, and Priest about rent. And if it's okay, I just want to spend a moment talking about my own experience. I was actually in landlord-tenant court today, representing my organization in failure to pay rent cases. And what I've observed over the past year and a half is that Annapolis and the county council have been layering a lot of procedural obstacles in front of landlords in order to achieve judgment, which doesn't address the fundamental issue. The proximate cause of failure to pay rent judgment is a failure to pay rent, and that is because of limited resources, which probably need to be unlocked from Maryland or from the county. But the bigger issue is that a lot of these procedural obstacles, I would call them, toward getting judgment, and also on the back end toward eviction now, is that a lot of resources from the county, from Bethesda Cares, from Interfaith Works cannot be released without judgment. So a lot of tenants actually need to get a court-stamped judgment in order to receive rental assistance from these different organizations. That could be something that could possibly be addressed with both the county council and with Annapolis, because we have a lot of tenants and we often spend time providing ledgers, written letters explaining their situation, and yet that's simply not enough for these organizations to release funds to get them the assistance they need. And the other problem is that when a judgment is delayed because of a procedural issue, say whatever, a notice, lack of notice, or improper notice was given to a tenant, it not only delays judgment, but it costs the landlord more money because they have to go back and they refile. In the meantime, the tenant is falling further behind in rent because it's not getting rectified. Resources are not being released. And so now a tenant who may only owe $2,000 or $3,000 in rent may go back to court in another 2 or 3 months and owe $5,000 or $6,000. And it now may be almost impossible for them to get that amount of money from rental assistance, Bethesda Cares, or all these other organizations. So really, in a way, the county and the state, they're thinking that they're helping these tenants, but really in many ways, they're blocking access to resources. So I just wanted to kind of echo a lot of what Commissioner Merkowitz and Miller and Priest have said, because I think it's a really important topic to address and to really be thoughtful about.
Can I ask a question on that specific point? I'm very helpful. Appreciate it, and appreciate the insight and any other insights here you may have. I mean, what would be a typical amount of assistance? $2,000 or $3,000? Is that? And I guess the question I have is, if assuming we could wave our magic wands and get the procedural obstacles removed and the judgments coming more quickly and the resources released more quickly, so the tenant gets the $3,000, pays it in, they're current, but can they continue? I guess the question is it an ongoing? Is it typically, or how often is it a challenge on an ongoing basis? Because I guess my response in some way to your point is, if I'm $3,000 behind, I could continue. If I could afford the rent going forward, I could continue paying it to keep that balance from growing. Can you explain to me?
Absolutely. And in all honesty, the recidivism rate's pretty high. I mean, we do have a lot of tenants who come back before the court and before us because they have failed to they've caught up on rent with emergency services through the county, and then they fall behind again. And I think that comes to a lot of issues. There's probably an education piece involving financial education, prioritizing rent. I think that sometimes it may involve trying to determine or sitting down with the tenant and restructuring that rent so that it is on a sustainable model for them, if that is possible for the landlord to do. So yeah, there are a lot of other issues. And of course, in general, affordability is just at the basis of all of this. So yeah, but
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciate your comments, Adam. And, I also want to make clear that, I am not unsympathetic at all to, the tenants that are on the other end of this. I don't know what caused their original hardship. I mean, I'm assuming that in most cases, it's not a deliberate decision to just not pay rent. And so, and one of the things I appreciate about HOC is the efforts that we do make to try to get resources to our tenants, when they need them. There are larger systemic issues at play here, and affordability, and income, and all of these things. And the education that we provide as well to or offer to our residents in terms of financial education. But it is helpful, though, to hear that how this system is also hurting the residents and the people that ultimately we're trying to serve. And so to the extent that Chelsea, if there are things that can pick up from Adam or the resident advisory board that would be helpful for things that we can be advocating for, and bringing in some of these perspectives as well, because as Adam was saying, there may be times where the county, the state is believing that they are helping when they're compounding harm.
I'll just share as it pertains to, for example, the requirement to have an eviction notice. We've raised this issue directly with our peers in HHS. Christine Hong, who leads SEF, and I have had multiple conversations about this, as well as high-level county executive staff members. We even discussed, I proposed a potential MOU between HOC and the county so that they have assurance that we will be moving forward. We give the 10-day notice, help them before they go to the next level, because quite frankly, in addition to it being a burden in terms of process, it creates a record that is very hard to move away from in the future. Once you have an eviction, you can't lease back up with us even. You could go get on the waiting list, but you're no longer a strong potential fit for our units based on your track record. So it has a harm all around. However, there are, reasons why they have taken that route. The need far exceeds the demand. Demand far exceeds the, I get this wrong all the time. My team knows I'm awful with these things. I always want to give a catchy saying. I can't recall what it is. But the point is, the supply, the demand issue is real. And so when they're making a priority on who receives the resources, it is based on those who are actually moving, getting ready to be evicted. And they have used that as one of the key ways to determine how grave the situation is for that individual. That's the rationale. I will also just share that, of course, we, HOC, don't want to be in the front line advocating for evictions at the same time we're saying we're the place of last resort. But one way we are approaching this is, for example, on a continuous basis, including just last week, I was before the county council requesting support for HOC in terms of financial support for some of our properties, as well as operational support. And a part of that includes being able to lift up, why is it that HOC now needs additional operational support? And we came before the commission to get alignment and support to advance those requests, but we are pointing directly to the delinquencies and the deficit that we are experiencing, and lifting that up as the reason why we need the additional support. Go a step further, the county does provide funding for the judicial system. And so being able to point out that there are just not enough judges to move these cases along quicker, and potentially addressing the need for additional administrative judges, additional court personnel, so that these cases can move quicker than a 9-month time frame, is another way around the, around a circular way to get to hopefully the same point. If we were able to get our cases before the court within a month or two, we know if we're moving forward or not, if we're going to be able to get judgment, if we're going to be able to get these units back leased up. So that's another way that we're advancing our requests. We're having conversations with council members and others about the fact that these judicial slowdowns are having this impact. And if there are other creative suggestions, ideas, obviously open to them as well. Some are better postured to make certain arguments than we are, but we are all essentially saying the same thing, that it's unsustainable at this current rate.
Adam, am I clear to say that a lot of these organizations that give the money, they want the residents to have some money too?
So some of the organizations will require them to make a good faith payment before they will release funds. That is correct. Not all of them. And it depends on their circumstances and how many times they've gone back to ask for resources.
Thank you.
But to President Andrews' point, I do want to say that if you look at the law when it was initially drafted and has never been amended, when a failure to pay rent complaint is filed, they anticipated that a landlord would be in court within a week. And they haven't even amended that. And you're lucky to get in court in about 60 days on average. I think that if there would be some way to unlock resources before you get to the judgment stage, maybe at the notice of intent stage, it would be really helpful. And I just think it would also reduce the number of tenants who have to go to judgment because, as President Andrew says, even if you do pay that off and you aren't evicted, you have a judgment on your record. And any future landlord will look for that. And so it's unfortunate. And to your point, Commissioner Merkowitz, I think there are 3 buckets of tenants. One bucket is a tenant who's just going through a rough patch one time. There are tenants who just may be having issues with financial resources to pay the rent. And then there's a smaller bucket of tenants who just don't intend to pay rent and are riding out the system as long as they can. And to Commissioner Priest's argument, those tenants need to be evicted so that tenants who really take their housing seriously and are willing to pay can be moved in. But it's a lot. It's a lot. So anyway, I'll go back to my written prepared statement. Thank you for indulging me. I appreciate it. So I'll be discussing our February 23rd, 2026 meeting. Attending that meeting were Vice President Lynn Hayes and Assistant Vice President Mita Lim. Ms. Hayes delivered a presentation on the revisions to Chapter 22 of the Housing Choice Voucher Administrative Plan and took time to respond to questions from board members. Following the presentation, the board voted to endorse the proposed revisions. And on behalf of the board, I would like to thank Lynn Hayes and Mita Lim for their time. After Ms. Hayes' presentation, the board opened the floor for nominations to fill the vacant position of secretary. Ms. Stephanie Frazier stepped forward and the board unanimously elected her as board secretary. And I am pleased to report that the board is now fully seated and all the officer positions are filled. Following the vote, the board discussed the current bylaws. And we decided at that meeting that it would be helpful for us to circulate those bylaws and review them before our March meeting, where we could more effectively discuss appropriate revisions to keep those bylaws current and effective. We then spent some time discussing the topic of why tenants are not moving into high economic opportunity areas. And there were several thoughtful perspectives shared by members of the RAB, and I would be happy to discuss those ideas with commissioners at their convenience. We also discussed, one possibility that we discussed was holding a town hall with current tenants and waitlist applicants in order to bring in a broader range of voices into the conversation on this very important topic. In addition to the topic of a town hall on high economic opportunity areas, we also discussed ways the board can be more engaged with the tenant community overall. Suggestions included hosting additional town hall meetings to hear directly from tenants on a range of issues, as well as attending some of the HOC Helping Our Community events directly. To support that effort, Rita Harris circulated a list of upcoming HOC Helping Our Community board dates, and we're very hopeful that some of the board members will be able to attend those events. Finally, Davida Rowley and Rita Harris discussed the Housing Advocacy Day in Annapolis, which was on March 3rd. This event provides an important opportunity for board members and others to voice their support for continued funding and policy support in Annapolis, as well as to highlight the ongoing need for affordable housing across the state and in particularly to Montgomery County. On behalf of the board, I would like to thank Vice President Jameen Johnson and member Irma Washington of the RAB for attending Annapolis Day, and also President Andrews, Vice President of Government Affairs Ken Silverman, and the commissioners for making it possible for board members to attend. And finally, Davida Rowley and Rita Harris for their support in getting the logistics and coordinating us to get up to Annapolis that day. Our next scheduled meeting is Monday, March 16th, and I am happy to address any questions or comments.
Thank you, Adam. I am curious, and I would be interested in hearing more, but at least for now, can you hit some of the highlights in terms of your discussion of why residents are not?
As a matter of fact, I can. So just to highlight a few of the things. Number one, interestingly enough, is education. So a lot of the members of the RAB said, when I got my voucher, I really didn't know what these areas are. And some people even are coming from other states and haven't lived in Montgomery County or in Maryland for very long. And so they said, it would be really helpful to know that Bethesda, Chevy Chase, or certain areas may have better economic opportunity or schools. I realize it gets to be very sensitive around steering, but I believe there would be some way to maybe solely educate without looking as though we're steering, which might encompass just giving a broad range of education on all the different areas, geographic areas in Montgomery County where they could live. But that was actually fairly a common stream or a common thread was on education at the point of receiving the voucher. And
Adam, can I ask a follow-up
sure.
on that? And I definitely look forward to, I'm going to ask my team to get notes from that meeting. But in order to receive a voucher, you have to be a Montgomery County resident or work in Montgomery County. So you're suggesting that there are people who are residents who would benefit from more information about the county? Is that what
So
people are saying?
So what they're saying, they obviously they live and they work in Montgomery County, but surprisingly, a lot of them are not very well informed on all the different neighborhoods. It was very surprising, but this was actually something that several people did bring up, and they said, "Well, I didn't really know that Bethesda had really good schools, or that it had a lot of job opportunities, or that it was a particularly walkable neighborhood, or that it had good metro access."
Okay.
So it was something that they did bring up quite frequently.
Great.
Other issues were, would it be more expensive to live in a more expensive neighborhood, even with an HOC voucher? Would groceries be more expensive? Would gas be more expensive? Would transportation in general be more expensive? And again, this goes to certain biases that may or may not be true, that it may be cheaper to live in Germantown, or it may be cheaper to live in Clarksville than to live in Friendship Heights, absent the voucher, just in general. And again, I think that goes to an education piece on that. And for other people, it was just the community. That's where their friends live, that's where their family is, and it may not be in those neighborhoods, it may be in other neighborhoods, and they would prefer to stay close to a church or other faith-based organizations. So that's why their preference moves them into neighborhoods that may not necessarily align with these high economic opportunity zones. So those are some of the highlights.
That's very helpful. And, the idea of not knowing much about other parts of the county, I find that totally believable. That, most of us are fairly provincial. We know our neighborhood, we know our community. We've heard of other neighborhoods, other communities within the county, but we may not know a lot about them, or where the best schools are, or unless that's something that you're very involved in, and where there may be more jobs opportunity. And just a comment on the cost of living. The irony, of course, is that it is usually more expensive to live in a low-income area than it is to live in a higher income area. The cost of groceries is typically higher, in food deserts, and a whole host of services are more expensive. Even rent sometimes is more expensive in low-income areas for the same type of property. And so, again, it does sound like there are opportunities for education with our tenants. I don't know that there's much we can do or even necessarily should do around the idea of wanting to be around your community. That's also completely understandable.
Absolutely, and I think that's a valid point. I also think, though, to your point, I wouldn't be able to tell you what Boys, Maryland is like. I would have no idea. And so I do think that while people may instinctively think people all know Bethesda, they all know Chevy Chase, they don't necessarily know that. And and your points about a food desert and the cost of living could potentially be more expensive in other less, in certain neighborhoods than in others. That all goes to education. Like, I would not have necessarily intuitively thought that, and I think a lot of the board members also kind of lean into less expensive neighborhoods or cheaper overall. But this all goes to sort of a comprehensive education piece for people who are getting a voucher, who could be coming out of homelessness, could be coming out of living with family and don't really have a choice of where they've lived in the past. So making that decision maybe requires a higher level of education than for other people who've been renting and living throughout Montgomery County and renting in, commercial
Yeah.
properties.
There's a lot of research out there about the poor tax, essentially,
Right, exactly.
that there's a tax on being poor. So,
Mr. Chairman, I just want to note for the record that I agree, Jeff can be quite provincial, but he's not for me in this regard. Thank you, Adam. Really, really interesting. And I would also, I'm sure all the commissioners would, as well as the staff, would enjoy seeing your notes.
Okay,
Thank you very
definitely.
much.
Thank you very much.
Oh, to adjourn this open session to a closed session. Okay. Pursuant to Section 3-305B and D of the General Provisions Article of the Annotated Code of Maryland, I move to adopt the written closing statement dated March the 11th, 2026, and to adjourn this open session to a closed session to discuss three topics. The first topic is HOC's line of credit. The second and third topics concern the financing of two properties located in Bethesda. HOC must discuss all three topics in closed session to protect confidential commercial and financial information provided to HOC by third parties. Section 3035B13 allows this meeting to be closed. If a member of the public that's watching this meeting in real time on YouTube wishes to object to the closed meeting, please comment in the YouTube chat box or contact HOC's General Counsel. Instructions can be found in the Open Meetings Act objection procedures, which is posted on HOC's website. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. So ordered. The meeting is now effectively closed as of 5:45 p.m.
Thank you.